Oh, Black Betty. Bam, bam, bam. Whoa, Black Betty. Blam, bam, bam. Black Betty had a child.
Oh,
Blam, bam, bam. Thing went wild. Hey, we're live. Well, that was weird, Brian. Like I hit go live and then it said live in the little corner of our screen, but it showed like 14 seconds. So we
hmm.
went from like we were live for 14 seconds without even knowing it, I think.
Oh.
That's okay. I mean, people just had to hear my singing. I don't know that it matters a terrible amount.
At least you picked a good song.
At least today's generation don't even know what song that is. All right.
They should. That's good.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. I'm going to do the thing here. This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, Season 10, Episode 7. Welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network of podcasts brought to you by HK. That'd be Heckler and Koch for you people who don't know. Today is Friday, June 21st, 2024. As of the recording of this episode, I am your host, Jacob Paulson. And I am also joined today by Doc. That'd be Brian McLaughlin, for those who don't know. And don't forget to follow us on all the social medias so you're up to date with all the latest things we're doing. I got a lot going on. We also did some auditing this week with the podcast stream. So for those who don't know, you can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts. You can find it on Amazon Music, on Audible, on Pandora, on Spotify, on TuneIn, on iHeartRadio, all the cool places. Or if those are not cool, I guess I wouldn't know. But you know, I think that those are the cool places, and you can always subscribe using whatever podcast app you love. So do that. Yeah. Today's going to be great. We're going to talk about some sneaky new gun control stuff going on. I tell you, we may not like the Gungrabbers, but we never said they were dumb or uncreative. So we're gonna dive into all that goodies. Today we're calling this episode "Gun Control: The Merchant and the Great Merchant Code War." So it's gonna be lots of fun. We do have some sponsor messages. First, from our friends over at HK, the makers of fine guns. We had a new HK show up at the office this week. Were you there, Brian? Or was last week? The rifle? Did you see the rifle?
I did. I was there when the rifle came in. Everyone was a buzz. Everyone had to see it because it was pretty sweet.
One of our employees recently ordered a new HK rifle, and not gonna lie, it looked pretty dope. And wow. Anyway, that's not the point. That was really a tangent. I shouldn't have gone there. The point is, Heckler & Koch, they make some of the finest handguns in the world. In fact, I was talking to a guy the other day who I believe to be one of the smartest people I know relative to like guns, like the physical attributes, the gunsmithing, the parts, the mechanics. And he said something to me. I was talking to him about how HK is now sponsoring our podcast. And he's like, something I can tell you about HK is that they make the most reliable handguns on the planet. He's like, no one makes a more reliable handgun than HK. And I thought, dang, that's bold coming from that dude.
High praise.
So high praise. I didn't even say who that dude was. So I guess no one else thinks that's bold, but I agree with him. I think HK makes the most reliable handguns in America. I am familiar with their testing and R&D process. I've learned recently about what they do when they decide to bring a gun to the market. And I don't know if I'm at liberty to share it. So I'll just say my mind was blown wide open. Like, in order for them to bring a gun to a market, that gun must be amazing based on their standards. So whatever that's worth. This episode is also brought to you by Tactical RX. Brian, you rock some Tactical RX shades. What do you think of them?
I love them. They fit great on my face. I look fantastic in them. And I love that they protect my eyeballs, which is very important. I like having a set of clear ones in my vehicle in case I'm like running up on a car accident or something like that at night. Having some eye protection and some clear lenses is always nice. So I like having a pair of those in my truck. But otherwise, my sunglasses are my go-tos.
Yeah, guys, if you've been doing this for a while, you probably are at the point where you're ready to budget for some quality eye protection. I think most of us start out with some cheapo glasses, and that's probably fine when your budget's stretched thin and you have tons of crap you got to buy to be a responsible gun owner. But you hit some point where it's you need some good glasses and you need to budget to those. And Tactical RX is not going to break the bank. These guys are the innovators of the safety glasses world on planet Earth. They really have made some of the biggest changes and innovations that all your major name brand players are using today, and they do it very affordably. So check out tacticalrx.com for your safety glasses needs. All right, let's get into this gun control, gun merchant code war chat, Brian.
Politics.
So I wrote an article about this. Yeah, good old politics. And I wrote an article about this recently because it kind of came onto my radar. I mean, I've heard whispers of this, like I see the articles about it, but I didn't really understand like what was really going on until really early this year when a merchant code law was proposed here in our home state of Colorado. And that's what led me to do a bunch of digging and research. So you've read some of that research I've done, Brian. Like, what are your, like, just give me like your initial like gut response when you learned about this.
My initial gut response was one of abject horror a little bit when you laid out for me everything that was going on with it, because I didn't know about it until you said something about it. And then I went and read your article. And then that was the weirdest thing is the politics. It's the loopholes. There are laws that are in place to protect us, and there's ways around those laws. And I think that's what I get out of this the most, is that doesn't matter what laws we've got in place, there's ways that they're trying to find around them, and we got to stay on top of it.
Yeah. For me, the story of the MCC war starts with the January 6th, whatever we're calling that event, at the Capitol on the day that Biden won the election.
That travesty.
And was taking office. Yeah, whatever. I don't even know what we're supposed to call it now. Whatever the political correct term is for that event, that thing. So what happened? The reason I say it starts there is because after that happened, the FBI gets tasked by people with money and power to go and investigate stuff. And among the things they're supposed to investigate are who were the perpetrators, who are the people who, broke into the Capitol and did the naughty things. And that's harder to do than it sounds because people are wearing masks and all this stuff, right? So the FBI gets that. Now, a couple of banks come forward. I don't know if they come forward. I don't know if like FBI approached them or they approached the FBI. I'm not entirely sure how that went down, but definitely what's clear is the FBI was working with some banking institutions to try and identify people who participated in the event, whatever we're calling it. That doesn't get me angry comments on YouTube. So you might be thinking, well, how in the world would a bank know that? How would Citibank or Bancorp, Bank of America, how would they know who was there? Like, and I think the average person probably does not spend any time thinking about how terrifying the world of data really is. I'm going to take another pause. I just took us back to like 2021. Now I'm going to take us back even further. Okay, just for a second, to back when Jacob had a real job and didn't do this for a living. Okay, I used to be in advertising. I used to work in broadcast media. I sold TV, radio, and internet advertising. I made a career out of doing that. And I think the average person in America would be terrified, just utterly terrified to understand how much data advertisers have about you. You'd be terrified. I'm going to tell just two quick stories that will paint a picture. Before the internet was ever even a thing, we're going back now into the late 90s. Well, the internet was a thing, but before it was really popular, before it was, let's say, in the late 90s, Target made huge headlines. Target, their advertising marketing team, they went to this data guy who worked for Target. Like, hey, data team, like, could you help us identify Target customers who are pregnant? And the dad's like, how?
Did we lose you? Did you lose? We might have lost Jacob there. Give me 1 second. Let me try to pull him up here. Well, I think we might be having some technical difficulties, but I think Jacob is talking about his career as in the internet industry long before he became for concealedcarry.com. And so this merchant war has been going on. This merchant code war has been going on for a little bit of time now. This article started popping out about it this year, but people have been talking about this for the last couple of years. And yep, it looks like we lost Jacob completely now. He just messaged me and said he doesn't know what's happening, and we're standing by and we're going to wait for him to come back here. But until we get into that, we're just going to talk a little bit, I suppose, about the whole political system. And these are difficult topics, I know, for our country, especially with the elections that are coming up here soon. I can feel everybody starting to gear up for it in a way, starting to kind of armor up. And that's kind of an odd feeling, as everybody around us kind of works our way into that. And we got Jacob back.
That was really frustrating. We were just before the show, we were talking about how I went to all these extra lengths to make sure my internet connection was going to be like solid awesome. And I don't know. I have no idea what happened. But it appears fine now, so we're going to assume that was a fluke.
Yeah.
The show must go on. Well, I was telling such a great story. I mean, I was in storyteller mode. I was kicking. I just felt like I was doing so good. All right. So Target.
So we were Target. Yep. Target. There was they hired somebody to go in and find out. Start from there. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So Target, they send weekly flyers out to people in the snail mail back then. I don't know if for those people who remember, like you have a mailbox and stuff. So they were sending out a weekly flyer to anybody who was a Target member, and everybody's a Target member because you put in your little phone number, they give you some discounts, right? So it's one of those deals where everyone's a member. So they have all this data about most of their shoppers. So they go to the data guy and they're like, we think we could make a ton more money if we could identify the customers who are pregnant, because that's a really key demographic. The pregnant people spend a lot of money. So we can figure out who's pregnant, then we can start sending them in their weekly flyer. We could tailor their ads to things that pregnant people buy, like, I don't know, car seats and strollers or whatever, diapers and such. And so the data guy is like, yeah, he figured it out. He's like, well, people who are buying these supplements, iron supplements or whatever it is pregnant people buy, and he figures it out. And they start tailoring the ads toward targeting people who are pregnant. So now if you've been identified as someone who's pregnant, your weekly flyer you get in the mail has, baby stuff. Okay. Well, a lawsuit happens where a dad sues Target. Now, there's a reason for this story. This sets a huge precedent in the advertising world. Okay. As dad sues Target because his 16, 17-year-old daughter is getting weekly flyers from Target and, with baby stuff. And he's like, how Target is like basically encouraging my daughter to get pregnant. And that's a problem. So he sues Target, goes to court. It's a whole drawn out thing. But the lawsuit gets dropped when, guess what? Dad finds out his daughter actually is pregnant, that Target correctly identified her as being with child. And so lawsuit gets dropped and we move on. So this was such a huge publicity thing that the advertising world's like, man, we are missing out. Like, if Target can figure out who's pregnant, what else can we learn about people? Okay. Like, I remember in 2012 running a Facebook ad targeting just my wife. Because when you run a Facebook ad, you can go and you say, I just want this to reach people who are this age, who graduated from this university, who live in this zip code, who like this breed of dog, who, you can keep going, who graduated from this high school, who have a birthday in this month. And you can put in all this data. And I just kept doing it until I knew, like, it was so specific, my wife would be the only one who would see it. And I ran an ad that said like something like happy anniversary, Amy, something like that. So the point I'm getting at, I'm telling this story to kind of get you to understand that there's this massive amount of data that the world is using for the purpose of making money, right? Like if I want to run a banner ad on the internet, I can choose to target that banner ad to people who, based on location, down to like tighter than zip code areas. I can target people based on whether they're how long they've lived there, their movement history, based on their language preference, based on where they're from, based on certain interest things, any number of potential interest things. They're into health, they're into fitness, they're into guns, they're into, all sorts of things. You can run ads based on purchasing behavior. This person smokes cigarettes. This person shops at Costco. This person buys healthier foods, foods that we associate with natural living. There's just all this massive amount of data, and you don't realize your banking institutions are making a ton of money on this. Like, you might be wondering, how can my credit card company make money if I swipe the card, I pay off the card, I never pay them any interest, and then they give me cash back rewards, in the form of points or cash? They must be losing money on me. Oh, they're not losing money on you. They're taking that data and they're selling it to advertising institutions. Does that make sense, Brian? I think that the average American consumer has no idea how much of your data is being correlated, collected, and sold. And that's really at the heart of what this new gun control is about.
So if I'm getting this right, so this data is compiled and you can use it to pretty accurately predict not only human behavior, but biological processes, which is impressive.
Yeah.
Because it's a prediction, right? If people are researching these particular things or falling into these particular categories, then they are X type of consumer, which makes sense. And a lot of people feel like their privacy is, being usurped through all of this because they're being tracked so heavily. But it also seems like we're being tracked already. Like the banking institutions have been doing this for quite a while. So everybody that's worried about being tracked is already being tracked for quite a while. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the average American, obviously there's things you could do. If this unnerves you, if you're concerned that some data collection third-party company is gathering data about you based on your address, your email address, your IP address, and your MAC ID address from your computer, if that bothers you, that they're collecting all this data from all these different sources, and that they're selling it to Google and Yahoo and whatever other brokers of advertising, if that's concerning to you, then there are things you can do. And some people do this. You can live in a cash world. You can stop using credit cards and debit cards. You can primarily live in a cash world. There's ad blockers and all sorts of things you can install on your computer that make it harder to track you. That you can use a VPN. There's lots of stuff, right? There's lots of stuff you can do. But
now, so my question is here. So you hear about this all the time. Like, you have to notify people that you're tracking them and all that kind of stuff, right? Like, you get notified, hey, just so you know, we're using cookies, or we're going to being on our website, we're going to use your data for advertising or whatever. And you get the option to consent or to leave that website. But it doesn't seem like you're given that option for banking institutions. They're just kind of given carte blanche. They don't have to follow the rules of everybody else. Why is that?
No, you're following the rules, because when you sign up for that credit card, or when you sign up to get that bank account or whatever the thing is, you're just agreeing to all those terms and conditions, right? They also have terms and conditions that are inherently part of the terms of service, right? So if you have a credit card, if you have a bank account, you've signed off on all those terms and conditions already. You've already agreed to that. It's just it's either that or you don't get the bank account. That's in order to have a bank account at this bank, you have to agree to these terms and conditions. So you've agreed to allow them to do all this stuff with your data. That's just done. So the premise here, the foundation we're trying to create, that we're setting up for the discussion, is to help people understand that your data is highly valuable, that your banking institutions make a ton of their money. A ton of their money is not coming from charging interest and lending and all that stuff. A ton of their money is coming from selling your data and information. And that data primarily is purchased and used for the sake of targeting better advertising at you. And some people, by the way, might think that's a good thing. I'm like, good. I'd rather get advertising that has something that's relevant to me. I'd rather get advertising for a hunting knife than diapers, because I'm a dude in my 50s who hunts. So to each their own, but that's the foundation for us to get where I need to go with this little new gun control tactic. All right. So now we fast forward back to January 6th with the incident at the Capitol. Okay. The FBI is working with these banking institutions to identify these people. Who we look at travel information, who bought tickets to go to DC. We look at, person normally all their credit card charges are in Missouri, but they got some credit card transactions here at the rental car company or at this cafe or at a hotel in Virginia. That's indicative that they traveled there for this event, right? They're working with the banks to identify people they should investigate. And I think that this led to some gun grabbers having a really good idea. They're like, wait a minute, if the banks can help the FBI out with their investigation to identify people who were part of the January 6th incident, could the banks also help us just identify gun owners and maybe even gun owners who are planning some sort of active shooter type event? Maybe they could. And so some research is done. Some gun grabbers start lobbying an organization. This is actually an international organization called the ISO, the International Organization for Standardization. The ISO maintains and approves the official list of merchant category codes. Now, let me explain a merchant category code. So a company who wants to accept credit cards, like us, like we're a company who accept credit cards. You go to concealcarry.com, you can buy something and you can put in a credit card. So a company who wants to accept a credit card, when you have to get a merchant account with some sort of payment processor and payment gateway. So you go to one of these. There's lots of them. It's a huge competitive industry, and you say, hey, I want to accept credit cards. They say, no problem. Here's our terms and conditions. And in that sign up process, you are asked to identify your business category. Okay. Now this business category that you're identifying is a merchant category code. So I don't know the codes, but let's just say, for example, 006 is automotive retailers and 007 is apparel retailers and 008 is plumbers. I don't know. But you get my point. Like there's these codes that are associated with specific business categories. So when we say merchant category code, we're talking about these business categories as maintained by merchant processors who take credit, who process credit card payments. Okay, so the gun grabbers lobby the ISO and they say, hey, ISO, we need a more specific MCC, merchant category code, for firearm retailers. Because as of right now, or at least before all this went down, the most specific we really could get was sports and outdoors. So guys, if you've been shopping from your local golf club when you buy your golf clubs, or from Sportsman's Warehouse or Cabela's or Shields, like all of those transactions were being categorized as sports and outdoors, which if you're a gun grabber who wants to identify gun owners, that's not terribly helpful because it's not clear if that person was buying golf clubs or a gun. It's all the same category. Does that make sense? So the lobbying is done to the ISO, and the ISO is told, hey, ISO, like we need a code that's more specific, that really helps us lock in and identify gun and ammo retailers and purchases. So the lobbying is effective. The ISO establishes this new merchant category code, and they roll it out in September of 2023, I think. Okay. So in anticipation of this and seeing what was going on and all these things, you have a bunch of now states who are in freakout mode. Yeah, you got states who are like, oh my gosh, like we cannot allow this. We don't want to allow this. Because what is, like, let's just think about the danger for a second, Brian. I'm going to ask you to give your comments on this, but what is the danger of insert financial institution name here, Capital One or Visa or MasterCard or Wells Fargo, of being able to hit a button on their computer and generate a list of gun owners? Like, what's the problem there?
The problem is singling out a particular group of people for potential harm. I think that is the ultimate problem. It should be a negative against everybody in every industry, to be able to do something like that, where you're targeting a very particular populace for a particular reason. So that to me goes against, a good portion of my own policies on freedom, I would say. Yeah. And I don't like being cataloged. I don't like being categorized and I disapprove of the methods that they're using to do it. It feels shady, and especially since it was used in that this is a direct result from the January 6th things. Feels very Gestapo-ish, to be honest. It feels very much in line with something that a surveillance state would enact in order to keep better track of its citizens and enact all of its policies, and that bothers me.
Yeah, this is seriously problematic. It's terrifying. It's terrifying. And we're going to get to what's happening in legislation right now relating to this, but it's important to understand the danger and the problem. Here's a quote from the New York Times about this. It said, quote, banks could then either allow the flag transactions or block them and file suspicious activity reports with the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, which would ideally also create a system to quickly forward that information to local law enforcement and the FBI, end quote.
So they just report whoever to the FBI.
Yeah. The claim here, like the supposed intent here, is we're going to identify people who are amassing guns and ammo, right? Because there can't possibly be any legitimate reason for someone to buy 10 guns and 2,000 rounds of ammo in the course of a couple of weeks. So we're going to now have this new method to identify those bad actors and forward their information to the FBI. That's the claimed intent by the people who are advocating for this. Like, how practical is that, Brian? Like what do you see any holes there?
Yeah. No, I think one of the challenges is going to be like the idea behind it is where they're getting a lot of their steam, right? Because obviously you can track people very effectively, and you can kind of predict what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And I can imagine they've got the purchase histories of every single one of those active shooters, and they know pretty well how all that stuff's going to work. So they're going to assemble and compile all that data, and they're going to put it in, and they're going to be able to track that stuff pretty effectively. But the problem is that it being weaponized and used against everybody else. So how do we figure out a better system? I don't know that, because I don't like active shooters either. I would like to make it more difficult for them to do bad things. But is tracking people and giving up our freedom, is that worth it? I don't know. I'm just stuck in a kind of a little quandary there.
It's a mess. There's so many messes of this. For one, we're talking about instituting one thing with the claimed intent of there being a massive infrastructure. Like forcing people, like companies like us, to use this merchant category code does not in any way guarantee that your credit card company or your banking institution is going to be able to go to the effort of tracking these transactions and then go to the effort of reporting them to the FBI. Like, there's no compliance requirement for these things to be reported, just a requirement that the data be potentially collectible. So there's our first problem. The second is, like, who's going to be this person who arbitrarily determines what transactions are suspicious?
Yeah.
Like, what's that line? Are you telling me that if I go drop $2,000 with that on transactions, collectively over whatever a month that have to do with that merchant category code, that now I'm red flagged? Crap, sometimes I spend that much in ammo, right? Depending on what I got coming up. So what about hunting season? Like, is every hunter in America gonna get red flagged real fast because they go get ready for their hunt and they got to buy some guns, some ammo, and some like stuff for the woods? Like, it's just like, so what's this arbitrary line we're going to draw in the sand where it's like, well, if you spent this much or had this many transactions or a combination of dollar value plus transactions in time period, we're going to flag you? Like, that sounds ridiculous. Like, there's no place you could draw that line that would properly identify these people. I mean, I can go drop $4,000 on a single gun, and the guy standing next to me in the gun store can take $3,000 and buy 5 guns. So like somehow you're going to take from the credit card data that I'm a threat and he's a threat? Like which one of us is both of us are threats now?
Yeah, I'm wondering, like, what are we? So something that I hit on a little bit that is very interesting to me. You said is who's got the authority? Who's making these calls? Like, so okay, so say somebody aligns with all this data, and so there's a person who's going to contact the FBI and be like, hey, just to let you know, this person's acting all shady. Who's that person that's making that authority and that call? Right? What is their training in their background? Like, what have they been through that gives them the authority? And because it's not a council, is this the decision of a single person? Because this isn't a judge making this decision. This is not someone trained in the law. I'm very curious about like how the details of how the FBI is notified about these things and who's making these notifications.
There's no law or proposal that would clarify that. At this point, the assumption would be that each individual financial institution can do whatever they want. They could potentially ignore the data entirely and not report anything, or they could draw the line wherever they want, report a ton of stuff. Like no one knows. And by the way, is the FBI even equipped to deal with these reports? Like all of a sudden, if we're talking about gun purchasing behavior and ammo purchasing, or it doesn't even have to be gun or ammo, mind you. This is just a purchase being made from a retailer who happens to sell guns and ammo. So you could go to Shields and buy running shorts and fudge and Legos, and that could be categorized as a gun and ammo purchase because Shields also sells guns and ammo. Shields is not going to have multiple merchant category codes. Do you understand that, right? Like every transaction in that store at every Shields is going to go on that merchant category code. And that's a problem. Like your Lego purchasing could be assumed as you buying guns and ammo because they don't know. All they know is that the transaction took place from this company called Shields, and Shields uses the merchant category code associated with firearm and ammunition retailers. That's a nasty thing. Here's the point. The point is nothing about the claimed intent is practical, is reality. Like nothing. The gun grabbers who are asking to make this a reality, what the reasoning they're providing for why they want this is so utterly far-fetched and ridiculous and impractical that it's a joke. Like, and we could keep poking holes in it if we wanted to spend the rest of our time doing it, but it's just absurd. That's the point. It's absurd because we're not going to require these financial institutions to do anything. So now the financial institutions, every given bank and credit card company on the planet, they're going to have their own flexibility as to how they identify, if they identify transactions, how they identify transactions, what threshold qualifies as suspicious, and if they report those and how they report them and submit them to whoever it is that they're supposed to submit them to.
Yes.
All of that is up in the air. It's completely, utterly ridiculous. And then we have to consider the FBI's ability to respond to these reports if they start flowing in. Like that's how it would take a lot of manpower to sift through. I think it's utterly crazy. So the takeaway here is not just like why all the reasons. Like hopefully we've supplied enough perspective for anyone listening to this to understand that the purported intent is silly. It is ridiculous. It is impractical. Well, so now we have to consider. Go ahead, Brian.
What the purported intent is to identify people who are going to potentially commit a crime, right? So this is very interesting to me because you're a Tom Cruise fan. So maybe you can remember this.
I know
movie.
Minority Report. I know where you're going.
Oh, yes. This is Minority Report. Yes. This is exactly Minority Report. They are identifying people who are potentially going to commit a crime. That is mind-blowing to me. This is just got way cooler in a totally different way.
Like I want listeners to think about something for a second. We see often active shooter events where the FBI was informed and warned that person was going to commit the crime, and the FBI either was incapable or incompetent or unavailable to be able to stop the event from happening. Like it happens frequently. Like mass shooters who commit mass shootings are often already on the FBI's radar. So even if the FBI has the data, I doubt the FBI's ability to actually stop the crime anyway. They've not shown any ability to do that up till now consistently or reliably anyway. Maybe they stopped tons of them I don't know about. But certainly we know of many that they did nothing or were unable or unavailable or had not sufficient bandwidth to stop. So unless we're suggesting, Minority Report style, that just based purely on your transactional data, we should just throw people in jail or take away their guns, proactively, unless that's what we're suggesting, which I don't think that's what's being suggested. I hope
Right.
not.
Yeah. How do you handle that legally? Because you can't go and just, I mean, I'm guessing they would go and like follow him, because you can't go and just arrest him because he hasn't done anything. You don't know.
The FBI doesn't have those resources. That comes back to that impractical thing. Like, let's just say I was on the radar. I spend enough money at gun and ammo retailers to probably be on that radar pretty fast. I'm probably going to get reported to the FBI several times a year if this is going down. So now what? The FBI is going to, like you said, what? Like investigate me? What are they going to do? Come interview me? That's not going to good. If I am a whack job, that's going to escalate me to action. So they're going to follow me around? For how long? Like how many spare dudes are my tax dollars paying for that they got time to follow this guy around? Like it's completely impractical. And I'm not saying FBI doesn't have the resources that it's either interview me or follow me. They got other resources. So maybe eventually they would eliminate me as a suspect, but it's an imperfect world. And regardless, those resources are also limited. Like they have only so much resources to investigate so many people. And time has shown that they're incapable of stopping these events consistently, even when someone calls them up and says, hey, this person said they're going to shoot a bunch of people. You should do something about it. Even when they get that info, they fail to stop those events. So I'm not saying that that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's true. I also don't want these events to occur. I don't want mass shootings. But this data somehow triggering an investigation is utterly ridiculous in every way. That's the point.
So yeah, so this is a risk versus benefit, kind of a thing. Like the practicality of the law is very low. There's unlikely to find anybody who's going to cause this or do the active shootings, but it could be weaponized. It'd be very detrimental, so the risk is very high. Yes.
Bingo. And expensive, I might add. Like not just expensive in terms of like how it impacts me as a consumer, but also the tax dollars it would cost me to implement something that would be close to practical. So yeah, now let's go back to the dangers. I'm going to read out loud a law. This is from the 1986 Firearm Owner Protection Act. Okay, this is a federal law. This applies nationwide since 1986. It reads as follows. No such rule or regulation prescribed after the date of the enactment of the Firearm Owner Protection Act may require that records required to be maintained under this chapter or any portion of the contents of such records be recorded at or transferred to a facility owned, managed, or controlled by the United States or any state or any political subdivision thereof, nor that any system of registration of firearms, firearm owners, or firearm transactions or disposition be established. Nothing in this section expands or restricts the Secretary's authority to inquire on the disposition of the firearms in the course of a criminal investigation. So put differently, since 1986, we've had a federal law in place in this country that prohibits a government body from having a registration of guns or their owners. Okay, that's the law. That means that the state of Colorado that I live in can't just willy-nilly, in any possible conceivable way, have a list of gun owners or a list of guns and their gun owners. That's illegal. Okay. It has been since 1986. There's a couple of jurisdictions that are arguably grandfathered in because they were doing it prior to 1986, but those jurisdictions can be named in less than 2 hands. There's less than 10 of them. But some of them are famous. Hawaii. Yeah.
Do you? The thing I keep thinking about though is like, do you think the legality of it matters? I assume there is a list, and if they've got it already, they might not have everybody has access to it, but there is a list somewhere that somebody has access to, and the NSA or the CIA or all of the people have got. I'm pretty sure. Like there's no doubt in my mind that there's already a list. They already know every single gun owner in America. They've known for a long time. And I am assuming that they've been tracking us. What do you think the likelihood of that is, Jacob?
I think the likelihood is good, but I think that crosses a little bit into conspiracy theory because I have no evidence to support that. But it's likely. I would put it as likely but illegal, right? And if there is such a list, I absolutely 100% guarantee I'm on it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just I'm confident that I'm definitely on the list at this point. So, but here's where we have to make the jump. This merchant category code concept is the jump from the NSA or the CIA or whoever boogeyman you think might have the list to having said list to private financial institutions having the list and doing it with it whatever they want. It's one thing to think the NSA might have a list. It's another thing entirely to think Wells Fargo has a list and they share it with Chase and US Bank. And the three of them combine their list and that they provide it to whoever's willing to just pay them for it. That is something else entirely. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about private financial institutions building a list off of transactional data and being completely ungoverned as to what they do with said data. That can't be allowed.
Yeah, I agree. That's shady.
That's not okay. All right. So I think we've laid out the issue pretty clearly. Let me give people some ideas of what's going on with this issue. Like, what are people doing? What have we seen as far as people taking action so far? So in 2023, when this merchant category code was being debated, created, and in the process of being rolled out, we saw a handful of states pass legislation either prohibiting the use of this code entirely or at very least discouraging it. And I know that sounds weird, like laws don't discourage things, but laws can discourage things by creating like consequences for how something is done or how it's used. So I'm not going to like start reading out every single state's law, but the following states passed a law in 2023 last year, either prohibiting the implementation of this code or just discouraging it in some way with some sort of negative, factor within their state. So those states are Florida, Senate Bill 214, Idaho, House Bill 295, Mississippi, House Bill 1110, Montana, Senate Bill 359, North Dakota, House Bill 1487, Texas, House Bill 21837, and West Virginia, House Bill 2004. So if you live in one of those states, last year, your state passed a law that either prohibits the use of this code or in some way penalizes it when it's used. Okay, so presumably, if you're in one of those states, when you walk down to your local gun store and you swipe your card, that could be golf clubs, right? It's the same as it's the status quo, it's the same place it's always been up till now. Okay. Now, that's not the end of the story, unfortunately, because also last year, let me see if I can find a date for you, September 26th, 2023, California signed into law Assembly Bill 1587, which requires the use of the merchant category code. So now in California, your local gun store is required to use that merchant category code to be compliant with California state law, which means if you go down to the local gun shop in Fresno County and swipe your card, debit or credit card or whatever, absolutely 100% the law requires that transaction be identified as being at a firearm and ammunition retailer. Story is not over, because now we enter into 2024. 2024, we've had a lot going on. Okay, so in 2024, we've had several states who have joined the big list. These are the states that have passed the laws who discourage or prohibit the use of the merchant category code. So these are states I would call, once again, safe for firearm transactions. And by the way, I'll add that some of these laws, at this point, most states have closed up their legislative session, but I have not been able to follow up on all these and determine which ones got passed. So the list I'm about to provide are laws that were at least being proposed this year I can't say for sure that all of these passed or didn't pass. I'm not sure. You'll have to follow up on your own. But here we go. Georgia, House Bill 1018. Kentucky, House Bill 357. Indiana, House Bill 1084. Iowa, HF 2464. New Hampshire, House Bill 1186. Ohio, Senate Bill 148. Tennessee, House Bill 2762. Utah, House Bill 406. Wisconsin, Senate Bill 466. And Wyoming, Senate Bill 105. Okay, so that's a lot of states. We now have something like 20 or so states that have basically made the use of this merchant category code illegal, or they've assigned some punitive issue, issue if it gets used. Mm-hmm. And also this year, unfortunately, one additional state joined California's ranks as being a state that requires the use of that code. And unfortunately for me and Brian, that would be our state here in Colorado. So that's what I've been able to track so far as states that are passing laws to either block the use of this merchant category code or to require it.
So that muddies the waters substantially, because you got all these people who are on opposite sides of the fence. What does that mean for the industry? How does the industry approach this if it's not allowed in some states but required in other states?
Yeah, it's messy. Well, I think this is problematic. I really do, because first consider that these laws are not all identical. So there's different flavors of it. So the way the requirement is in California might be worded differently than the way the requirement is in Colorado. And also the prohibition. The prohibition might be different in Florida than it is in Texas. And if you are in our industry, if you're a business in the firearm industry, you need to go, and you're in Colorado or California, you need to go read it very specifically, because I was quite relieved the day that I read the one in Colorado that got passed, because it doesn't apply to my business. So concealedcarry.com, if you go to our company and you buy something from us, it is not getting logged with that merchant category code, because the way the Colorado law is written is it only is enforced on retailers that sell guns and ammo and something like I can't remember. I'm butchering the wording, but it's such that our company would not apply because we don't sell guns and we do not sell ammo. Those are two things we just don't sell. We sell basically everything else that has to do with guns and ammo, but we don't sell guns or ammo. So we're exempt from this requirement, right? But definitely anyone in Colorado who sells guns and ammo is not exempt. Now, this is the first thing I want you. Let's think about is how this would impact a retailer who has locations in multiple states. So think of your big box players, the Cabela's, the Sportsman's Warehouses, the Shields, the Bass Pro Shops of the world, the Tractor Supply, the Mills Fleet Farms. Those guys, they may have locations in California or Colorado, but also in other states. So how does that impact them? Well, you should be aware that merchant accounts are set up on a per location basis. So just because, if Shields, who has 2 locations in Colorado, or Bass Pro Shop, who has 2 locations in Colorado, if they are forced to use the firearm and ammunition retailer category code at their locations in Colorado, that does not necessarily have any impact on their locations in other states. So merchant accounts are set up on a per location basis. So that's the first thing to understand, is that if you're worried about shopping at Shields in Wisconsin because you know that they have a location in Colorado, and Colorado is requiring the use of that merchant category code, those two things are unrelated. Shields can be compliant with both those states independently without any trouble at all.
Oh, okay.
That's the first thing to understand. But the second thing, this one gets a little bit less clear. Let's say you're an online retailer. You sell, you're guns.com, Bud's Gun Shop, Palmetto State Armory, whatever. Some company that sells guns or ammo online. Okay. So if you're based in Colorado, okay, and you have a customer come to your website and order something, and that customer is from Florida, you're shipping the gun to an FFL in Florida, do you have to use the merchant category code for firearm and ammunition retail? The customer's in Florida, but you're in Colorado. So what are you going to do? A little unclear. There's not a lot of clarity on what the law says on that. I think my personal Jacob only non-attorney interpretation of that beast is that you have to use the merchant category code because you're in Colorado. So now your Florida customer who's ordering something from your website that's being shipped from Colorado is they're going to pop up with the merchant category code on their transaction as being from a gun and ammunition retailer. Now you can flip that around as well. The gun store, Palmetto State Armory is in South Carolina. Someone from Colorado goes to their website, places an order. They have to ship that gun to Colorado FFL. Is that transaction that transaction is to a Colorado customer, but the company is based in South Carolina? Does that have to get tagged with that new MCC? A little bit unclear. Jacob's personal non-attorney, interpretation law is that it does not. That because Palmetto State Armory is in South Carolina, we're all good. But that's just me making crap up. That's one of those things that we don't know yet because these laws are too young, too new to have any idea how they're going to be interpreted by who. So until someone pushes the issue, we don't know. Which means that all these companies should be doing everything they can to avoid using that merchant category code. But it's also worth noting, by the way, this is not a opt-in thing. In other words, if I have a gun store in Colorado and Colorado just passed this law, the law does not say that me, the gun store, I need to go change my merchant category code. The law says that the merchant providers with whom I have an account, they have to assign it to me. So if you're thinking, well, my gun store, my buddy down at Bob's Guns, he's not going to comply. He's going to ignore this crap just like he did all the other stuff that's come down the pipe. It doesn't matter what Bob wants. Bob, the company that Bob is using to process credit cards, the law says that company has to assign him that merchant account code. So how does this affect the industry? I think that we're going to continue to see states passing laws that prohibit it. We're going to continue to see states passing laws that require it. I think that we're going to see if the ISO, if the credit card companies, the Visas of the world or banking institutions can do anything about that. We're also seeing states pass laws that basically prohibit financial institutions from discriminating against companies that are associated with the gun industry, or if they do discriminate, preventing those financial institutions from being able to do any business with the state, which is a huge blow to a financial institution if they can't do business with the state. So that could come into play here. That could start to be used as a tool against this issue. I think we're also going to see, like, if you live in California or Colorado right now, never use a credit card or a debit card ever again at a gun store. You go to the ATM, you withdraw cash every time. Never swipe your card again. Like, it's a loophole basically to keep me from getting onto a list that my financial institution might be keeping. The other thing that I think we're going to see, Brian, as an industry, is we're going to see financial institutions become more transparent about their being pro-gun or anti-gun, right? We're going to see probably Citibank, Bancorp, Bank of America. We're probably going to see those guys step up and say, yes, absolutely, we've set up systems to report this transactional data to the FBI or whatever. And we're probably going to see some other banking institutions raise their hand and say, hey, this ain't our fight. We ain't doing that. Like, we're just a bank. Leave us out of your mess. So I think we're going to see more division among financial institutions, and gun owners like you and me are going to decide who to bank with.
That's very interesting, because I've heard that one of the main problems with banking is that banking is banking and that you can't really do it that differently. Like, all of the numbers are kind of locked in for all of the various percentages and that kind of stuff. So differentiating yourself from the competition is very difficult. And so I think that's kind of interesting that might be a different way that banks can kind of differentiate themselves and actually get a portion of the market by politically. That doesn't seem safe at all. That sounds so sketchy. I don't like that.
No, you shouldn't, and we shouldn't. And it's unfortunate this has to happen. I mean, up till now, we've seen some banks be very anti-Second Amendment. We haven't seen any big banking or financial institutions come out as being pro-gun. What we've seen is a bunch who just basically refuse to be part of the debate. It's like, leave us alone. We want nothing to do with this gun nonsense. We're just banks. We're just credit card. We're neutral, basically. So up till now, we got financial institutions that have been anti-gun, and we got financial institutions who have been neutral. But I think we're going to see more division over this issue. We're going to see some financial institutions who will basically decide they got to be anti-gun in order to continue. And we might see some financial institutions who basically say, the neutral will become the new pro-gun, right? Where every town against gun violence, or every town for gun safety and moms demand whatever, all these anti-gun groups will start lobbying against the banks. They'll start going after them and saying, hey, how come you're not reporting this data? We've made it so you can. We got this new merchant category code. Why aren't you reporting data? Why aren't you keeping a list? Why aren't you doing the things that we want you to do? And the pressure will build on those financial institutions to either say okay and comply or say screw you. And so being neutral will become being pro-gun, because those lobbyist groups will almost certainly label those banks as pro-gun, as supporting violence, because they're refusing to comply in the way they want them to comply.
Sure.
This is all just conjecture. I have no idea. I'm guessing based on what we've seen happen in the past.
Right. Well,
so anyway, that's the merchant code gun control war. Is states passing laws, private financial institutions having access to gun registration database effectively, and then them independently getting to decide what to do with it. It's terrifying. Well, folks, I've been doing most of the talking. Brian, I appreciate you helping people get some perspective on this. I'm quite concerned. I was really concerned about our own state, because I thought if this impacts our business, if our business had to be assigned this new merchant category code, would this mean we have to leave the state? And there might come a day where our company has to leave Colorado, but this law is not that day. We're exempt. We're not impacted by this, and to that I'm very grateful. But what are your kind of final thoughts on this issue?
I think one of the things that really hit me was that the Minority Report is real. Like, that really kind of put things into perspective for me a lot. Because I've seen that movie and it was science fiction, and now it's like a real thing that's possible, but there's no like oracles or no weird systems. It's just collecting massive amounts of information, compiling it, and then using it to get rich or to weaponize. And I don't know, it's just a different part of the world that I haven't really known too much about. And I don't really like being tracked, but I can see that it would be valuable to stop active shooters, but this doesn't seem like it's the right way to do it. It doesn't seem like the people who are enacting these are, I don't know, they seem untrustworthy. So, yeah.
Yeah. I have said many times on this podcast, and I continue to feel this way, that I am not opposed to legislation that can stop gun violence. I'm not. I think there has to be a cost-benefit analysis. Like, it's got to do that in a way where the benefit outweighs the consequence or the inconvenience to me, the responsible gun owner.
Yes.
So I am open to the possibility. I'm open to the potential existence or proposal of legislation that I think could actually stop or reduce gun violence, even if it had some inconvenience to me. It's just a matter of weighing the benefit to the cost. The problem for the gun grabbers out there, I guess, is that I've yet, in the time I've been in this industry full time and been paying attention, even I guess when I was part time, I've yet to see any proposals that would do that. I've yet to see, like, it's not just that I haven't seen proposals where the benefit outweighed the inconvenience. I've yet to see proposals that have any benefit. Like, I am in the camp of believing that this merchant category code thing would have zero impact on stopping active shooters, would have zero impact on reducing gun violence. I just don't think it would have any zero positive benefit at all. So any inconvenience at all to responsible gun owners then is intolerable because there's no benefit at all. That's where I'm at on this one.
I think that's extremely well said. I think that's the kind of vibe that I would like to see in the Second Amendment community, is like, yes, if it inconveniences me, but it makes a difference, I'm willing to listen to that. But so far they haven't had any practicality. And what they're doing is they're disguising this in that category of active shooter. They're like, oh, this is for active shooter stuff. And they're like, nah, is it though? I don't think so. It doesn't seem like it is.
Well, you just hit the hammer on the head, and that is that we're giving them the benefit of the doubt. We're giving the people who propose this kind of legislation the benefit of us discussing it in such a way so as to give them the benefit of the doubt that their actual intent is good, that their actual intention is to stop gun violence. Like, we're giving them the benefit of that doubt, but there can be no doubt at all that at least some of the people involved, that some of the gun grabbers involved here are not that dumb, that they're actually intelligent enough and researched and capable enough to know that this actually wouldn't help at all, and that their actual intent, their true intention, is to create the registry of gun owners so that when the time is right, they can come get all our guns and take them away. And that's unfortunate. That's true. I'm not saying that everybody involved in these kind of proposals is like that. I think some of them are just ignorant enough to think this would actually stop gun violence. But some of them are absolutely smart enough to know that this is not going to help at all, and they have an alternative motive, which is to disarm American citizens. Mm-hmm. That can't be allowed.
Yeah.
All right, folks, that's basically a wrap here at the Concealed Carry Podcast on the Great Merchant Code gun control battle that is raging right now. This is a new thing, and if you're not paying attention, you might miss it. And we don't want you to miss it. We got to do something about this. So pay attention, see what's going on. Is there legislation been proposed in your state? Has it passed? Are you doing what you need to do to guard your privacy as far as your financial transactions? Maybe you're going to make some changes after having heard all this. We appreciate you being here with us today and listening to the show. Please don't hesitate to go write us a review. If you enjoy this podcast, please go write a review on wherever it is you like listening to the show. That's a great way you can support us. Please check out Guardian Nation. That's another great way you can support us. It's like our Patreon, guys. Like if it's just a way to take care of us, but you get a ton of benefits. GuardianNation.com. Go learn more there. And one more thank you to our sponsors today, HK and Tactical RX, for supporting the show. From Denver, Colorado, this is Jacob and Doc signing off. Have a great day.